I was invited to speak at the Academy on the history and the evolution of cannabis. And it's a great honor to be speaking here. The origins of cannabis, of course, are mysterious because there are no fossils of cannabis, and it becomes difficult to establish a time when it evolved. And we, instead of using fossils, used a different approach called the molecular clock, where we looked at the number of nucleotide changes between cannabis and humulus and made a genetic tree to correlate the number of nucleotide substitutions with the number of years since the two species diverged from a common ancestor. And our method determined that cannabis evolved 27 million years ago. So it's much older than humans. And it's learned how to get along by itself without us for a very long time. And the probable use of the cannabinoids, which it evolved, were to help it defend itself against insects, perhaps mammals. And only in the last 10,000 years has this cannabinoid signal of deterrence and repulsion turned into a signal of attraction in humans. And so now cannabis has gone from being a not so successful weed in Central Asia to a fabulous plant that grows around the world. The other comment I just made of Central Asia answers the question of where cannabis evolved, because by the time humans discovered it in the prehistory, they were already distributing the plant throughout Europe and throughout Asia. So because this happens before history is written, we have to use other evidence to determine where cannabis came from. And for this, we used pollen, ancient pollen, which is settled into the mud for millions of years. The pollen can still be identified. So we, thanks to global warming, many botanists are studying the pollen that is found in mud, and they publish their results on the internet. And so then we go back and look at 600 studies that others have published and looked for the signal of the cannabis pollen, and we find that the oldest pollen comes from a place in Western China, which is on the very edge of the Tibetan Plateau. So this is where cannabis came from and when it came from.